Good morning, my name is Kaylee Hill, and I am presenting this PowerPoint to my supervisor for his travel to France. The location overview. My supervisor is going to meet an international client in Paris. He will arrive at the Paris airport and will be greeted by the client's assistant, where he will either rent a car or catch a ride to the hotel. The population in Paris is around 66.7 million people, and that's not even counting the tourists. The weather when he would be there is going to be on the chilly side. It's definitely going to be a drop in temperature compared here in Texas. It'll probably get up in temperature to the mid to upper 60s. I would suggest to pack some warm clothes and some lighter clothes for during the day when it does warm up. Exchanging money. When my supervisor is in the high tourism areas, they can use traveler checks, but once he gets out of those high tourist areas, most likely businesses will not use traveler checks, so he will have to exchange that for euros. They also have ATMs which do accept major credit cards like Discover, American Express, Visa, or Capital One. But when you do withdraw money, you're going to have to convert the US dollars into euros, and 0.93 euros equals to 1 US dollar. For healthcare, Paris or France requires all the vaccines that the US requires, but one vaccine that they want to make sure everybody has is the tetanus vaccine. And they also recommend having full traveler's insurance just in case anything did happen and you're not in the hospital with no insurance. The basic language that is spoken in France is French, and some of the basic words or phrases to know is hello, how are you, yes, no, and goodbye. Also, when you walk into a place of business, it's really frowned upon when you start speaking fluent English to people that you don't even know that speak fluent English. And also speaking fluent English to French people, it can be insulting because they don't know what you're saying. It's like the people in France coming up to you and speaking French, but you have no clue what they're saying to you. For the business etiquette, the dress for business meetings are typically business casual. When you greet the business professionals, you do it with a firm handshake, and since you're going to be going to France, you're going to first greet them with Monsieur and Madame. And you want to introduce yourself with your first and last name, and also it would be good to learn some French gestures. Many people in France, they greet each other with kisses on the cheek, and sometimes they will tap their index finger on their nose, which means they think somebody is clever. But one thing you never want to do, how here in the US we make the OK sign with our fingers. In France, that means that you're telling somebody they're worthless or they mean nothing. It's also a good thing to print your English cards in English, to print your business cards in English and French. By having a dual business card is a great opportunity to show that you really want to do business. And then business meetings usually do start on time, but they begin with questions and to reaffirm the main purpose of the meeting. And if you want to add something to the meeting, try to do that before when you're doing the questions, because the French do not like to get stopped or go off topic of their detailed agenda. And also the French like to see how you do in in a tense debate. They want to know if you know your stuff and you're willing to speak up and tell them. And also, don't try to introduce something out of their comfort zone, because if you offer something that they don't like or don't do in France, they won't consider it. Having business meetings over meals. They're not as common as today as they used to be, but if it does happen, they normally happen over lunch. And if you do get invited, it's advised that you say yes, since they don't happen all the time. Dinner etiquette. You don't eat until you are told so. It's very frowned upon if you do. For utensils, your knife is always on the right and your fork's on the left. And when you're done, you place them parallel on the right side of the plate. Also, your hand should always be visible above the table, never in your lap or across your arms. When you pass food, you should always pass it to the left. And if you have lunch or dinner at a restaurant, you always should tip between 10 and 15%. And normally, if you do go with a business person in France, they normally pick up the check. The host will always sit at the head of the table, and if the host is married or anything like that, the host will sit at the head. They would both sit at the heads of the table. Having dinner at a business associate's home. In France, you never want to show up time. They want you to show up at least 15 minutes late, just in case they're running late and haven't finished getting everything together. You can also bring a gift, and if you don't know what they do like, it's always best to go to a wine shop and tell the employee at the wine shop that it's for a gift. And then they'll normally end up asking you, what are y'all eating? So they can make sure you bring the perfect wine. Also, the French people do not like you to bring food unless asked to, because you could end up bringing something that is way off the menu and make them feel like you don't like what they're cooking and that you're just bringing food for yourself. Offer to help the host. Ask before you come if they want you to arrive early, but most of the time it's a no. But once you get there, ask if they need help. During the party, ask if they need help, and also stay behind when the party's over to help them clean up. Dinner starts between 6:30 and 7, but that's not when the main courses happen. That's when they serve drinks. And the drinks are just to mingle, and dinner will usually start around 8:30. And normally having a big dinner party with the French people, it normally lasts around 2 hours or so, and that's for the main course, because you have your appetizers, you have your main course, or your appetizer, soup, main course, and dessert. So it normally lasts around 2 hours, so it is advised that you clear off your evening for nothing else. What to avoid when going to France? One thing you should never do is just go up to somebody and put your hand on their shoulder or on their arm, because they could feel violated and think that you're sexually harassing them. The only time it's okay to have physical contact at work is when you greet and say goodbye. This normally consists of a firm handshake. And knowing the difference between verbal and nonverbal gestures is extremely crucial for doing business internationally. And also, how here in the US, where we go to like Whataburger and drive through and like eat our meal on the go in our car, is not done in France. In France, when you get food to go, that means that you're getting your food at a restaurant and you're going home or taking it to somebody's house to eat it there like you would at the restaurant. You don't see people rarely in France eating or drinking on the go while driving. during work or walking down the street. A key rule for this topic is that you never should enter a business while consuming your outside food or beverage. By doing this, it's very disrespectful, and you could end up possibly using your visa or passport. In conclusion, it's extremely important to research before you're leaving the country. You shouldn't just assume that everything is the same in France that it is here in the United States. I feel the most important thing to take away from these tips and information about France is that you should never speak English to people who don't know it. And hopefully this information about France helps your meeting with your international client go smoothly.